just remember going to sleep. Next thing, I was in you could almost say it's like a plaza, but it was like a perfect square. It was so quiet. It was so peaceful. I couldn't even hear the movement of my clothes, rubbing against each other. I heard his voice call out my name, and he said my name perfectly. In the same voice, I could hear them both say my name, but in one voice. And then I heard God's voice say to me, "You will never see the other side if you don't let go." And at the same time, he said to me,
welcome to God's Voice Daily. I'm your host, Vladimir Proknevsky, and this is the channel where I share daily phone calls with people from around the world who've had real supernatural encounters with Jesus, angels, demons, and everything in between. Some of these calls go on to become full episodes on our main show called God's Voice Today, but here you will hear them raw and unfiltered, just the way they happened. So without any further ado, let's dive into today's featured call. Enjoy. Well, Bongani, you said you were taken to a quiet place by God, and then suddenly Satan appeared in your living room, right? Offering you a deal. So you got to tell me more. What happened?
All right. Basically, at that stage in my life, I just given my life to God, and this was around 2007. So what had happened is, newly born Christian, you have a lot of excitement and zeal, So I was doing a lot in the church that I was at the time. And one of the main things I was doing is I was part of a youth group that we have formed, some brothers and sisters of mine. And we always did it on a Friday. So what happened was the leader of the group, actually, he had then asked me to, on the one Friday, to give a message, to the youth, So I had never spoken in front of anybody regarding, anything regarding like Christ or anything, So I was very unsure what to say. So what I then did was I decided to just fast for 3 days. It was a dry fast. So it was quite a experience, I must say, And on the final evening of my fast, I was laying on the couch because I'd given up my bed. So I was in the living room. So what happened was I just remember just going to sleep, and next thing I was in you could almost say it's like a plaza, but it was like a perfect square. And I don't know if you've heard of the architecture. His name was British architecture. Okay, his name will come to me, sorry. But basically the structure of the place I was in was made out of stone. And on the sides of the square was covered. So you could see into the open area of the plaza through like windows. And each window was like almost held up by frames, by pillars, sorry. So what I distinctly remember was that when I found myself there, I couldn't even hear anything. It was so quiet. It was so peaceful. I've never ever heard silence like that. I couldn't even hear the movement of my clothes, rubbing against each other. That kind of quiet. Yeah, so it was like that. And there were 3 sets of steps leading onto the open area, and I proceeded to walk down, and still feeling this experience, I also realized everything that I'm made of was alive. When God says that, excuse me, but I'll paraphrase, but that scripture where he talks about that he'll make the rocks like, praise him, like give him glory. My nails, I could feel my nails were alive. Like it's weird to say, but everything of me was just alive. And my senses were extremely heightened. Now, another thing I picked up was that it was during the day, there wasn't a single cloud in the sky, but there was light, but you couldn't find the source of light. So you couldn't see the sun. It wasn't the sun, but everything had light, And so I proceeded to walk sort of towards the central area of the whole, perfect squared area I found myself in. And then I heard the voice. Now, I've had experience as a Christian, through my parents, because I was brought up in a Christian home, but I never had a relationship with Christ, It was just out of, growing up practice. But after I'd given my life to God, I remember the day I said to God, actually, someone came to pick me up and invited me to church, and they were waiting for me. And I stood outside my apartment and I just looked up in the sky and I just said, if you are real, the God of the Bible, this Christian God, if you are real, then I need you to show yourself to me. Let me know that you are real. I don't want a pastor, I don't want a deacon, I don't want any members of the church or anybody that believes in you to tell me that you exist. Because if you're real, then you're powerful enough to at least show me that. And that day was the first time, someone ever laid their hands on me and I actually felt something. And that was the day. But I still didn't, get that request I asked of God. But for the first time when someone, laid their hands on me, it was one of the altar calls, then, I felt something change inside of me. So getting back to now the vision that I experienced, I heard his voice call out my name, and he said my name perfectly. So, here in Africa, there's this thing where people appreciate it if you say their name, correctly or try and pronounce it correctly. And now I'm not like that. So don't worry, I'm not thinking about how you said my name.
No, I'll learn it by the end of the interview.
No, not a problem. But it's kind of a thing, yeah. You find you in Africa. But the way he said it was so perfect that I've never heard my name being said like that before. And I've never heard his voice before, but I knew who it was. And the funny thing is that I could hear the Father and the Son in the same voice. It's very hard to explain, but I could hear them both say my name, but in one voice. So it's not like, two people at the same time saying, Vladimir, and then you could kind of hear, okay, there's two people saying my name. It was like together as one. It was like that. And I was so taken back, and the voice and was so powerful. I was literally scared. There's many references in the Bible where they speak of, prophets who've had these experiences, with God, where, he calls to them and they fall prostrate on the ground. It was that kind of feeling. So I ran towards the edge and I grabbed one of the pillars, like I embraced it as if I was hugging it. And on the right-hand side was just a wall. I couldn't see the other side. So on the left, you could see the open area of the plaza, but on the right was just a solid wall. And the wall had lifted up, to about 2 feet. And there was light coming out from underneath. And it was just even light bellowing. So you could see light fractures. So it was like bending as well, And it was amazing. And that feeling was so joyful, and like I couldn't ever explain how it felt like, but what I did know, because when you're in the spirit, you know things without ever being told, or but I knew that that was his glory. And that was the first time I realized why it's so important that we give God his glory, but because it's an actual thing, you know? So I wanted to run, and, you know, like in the movies when you see people running and they slide under a closing garage, or, you know, it was that kind of thing I was trying to do, you know, because it was very low, and it just shut down. It immediately shut down. And then I heard the voice. I heard God's voice say to me, you will never see the other side if you don't let go. And at the same time, he said to me, don't be afraid. I love you. So he said those two sets of sentences, if you will, at the same time, but it sounded like he said it one after the other. And that again showed me how powerful God is, and how, you know, different. And he's just something else. So I never ever saw like the figure of God or Christ. I just heard his voice, but I knew who he was, and I knew that God was present with him, because they were both speaking to me at the same time. And right after he said that, like, the fear that I had had actually gone. But straight away, I found myself on the couch that I had gone to, you know, sleep in, where I was fasting. And I was sort of coming out of this sort of sleep, the state of sleep, and I felt a poke on my shoulder. It was extremely sharp. And I turned around, and dressed in a robe like a monk, was Satan himself. I knew it. Once again, you know things when you're in the spirit. Even though I felt I was in my apartment, everything was as is. I just turned around, and he calmly went and sat on my two-seater couch. And when he spoke, I could hear ancient knowledge, just a being that had been around for a lot of years. And with it came a lot of things he knew. And he was very, very convincing, even in just talking to me. So he said to me, I will give you everything if you will just leave what you're trying to do. Those were his words. Sorry.
Oh, keep going. Keep going. I'm still here.
So he had said that I'll give you anything if you just stop doing what you're trying to do. The form he came in underneath the monk, he was quite tall. I would say he was about 6'4", 6'5". Was the character in Harry Potter. Now, I had not seen the movie at all, and at this particular junction, where they show Voldemort, that's the person I'm speaking about, the character. That's how he showed up to me. So when I later on saw the trailer one day, like, I literally got goosebumps, because I've never been able to, you know, ever tell someone exactly how this person looked, but yet they depicted this character in the Harry Potter film when Voldemort was fully developed, apparently, something like that. But when I saw the trailer, that was exactly it. So I just remember my church, you know, people saying, you know, you have to rebuke the devil and stuff. So I didn't know really, I'd never faced adversity on this level. So I just remember saying, I need to rebuke you, you know. So I just said, I rebuke you, Satan, in Jesus Christ's name. So he didn't just puff and disappear, you know, into thin air. He calmly got up and came towards me and tapped me on my cheek and said, you don't know what war you just started. Oh. And he calmly turned around and walked out my apartment door. Now, his presence, for just quickly, last thing, his presence is anyone who's ever experienced a phantom nightmare. That is Satan's presence. And God's presence is his glory. So there's this infinite, you know, flow of joy with God and peace, and just an increase in that feeling. It's like and ever increasing, you know, and even when it's increasing, it's not to a state where it's overwhelming that you can't handle it. You just want more and more and more. So with Satan, his presence is exactly that feeling of, you know, of being in that, you know, moment where you have experiences of phantom nightmares. And from that day, I knew exactly that, you know, this is the God of the world. This is the God of everything. Because had that not have happened to me, Vladimir, I would have become a Muslim, because I was searching for something I felt was empty inside of me. So
wow,
that was, yeah.
You know, it's
That
interesting.
was a long and short of what happened, yeah.
By the way, I don't want to butcher your name. Can you say your name one more time? I just want to make sure I get it right. It's
no, not a problem.
Bongani, is it how you say it?
Yeah, there you go.
Bongani.
There you go. Oh, you sound South African. There you go.
Bongani. Well, it's interesting. You said Harry Potter. I recently interviewed somebody on this, actually, on the God's Voice Daily, and he was casting out demons, or I think a demon manifested through his sister, and these demons were multiple that were speaking to him. And I think he was actually from Africa. Now thinking about it, and the demons were saying how they are behind Harry Potter and how they inspired the writer to write it. And so, yeah, that makes sense that the characters you see are straight from hell, devil inspired.
Yeah, like it's, you know, that's so true, because like I even realized that everything is transcended. You know, it's either given to us by God, or it's God inspired, or it's, you know, depending on where things lay in your life at that point. But it either comes from God or from Satan. But yes, coupled with our own desires of life, that's where we need to find out exactly what's going on in our lives. But absolutely, you know, Hollywood is definitely inspired.
They're getting their ideas from the prince of this earth, so to speak.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
Another thing.
Oh,
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. No. I just wanted to tell you that, you know, with this testimony that I had, it took me a long time to start talking about it, because, like, you know, the latter part of the vision of me meeting Satan was quite terrifying. You know, he wasn't like a monster towards me, but he was just like his presence. Like it was it sort of numbed me for a long time, and I didn't know how to tell people, you know. And I just wanted to just say to anybody that's listening that I would encourage you to speak to God if you are truly not convinced that there is a God, or that you know there is a God, but you know, whatever's happening in your life, you feel a bit stagnant. You know, ask God for a God experience. I mean, I don't think there's more or a better way for God to let you know that He exists, other than you actually having an experience where no one can ever say, yeah, but you're lying, or but how do you know if that was true, and this and that. You know, you will know. And if that will help you along your journey, you know, then do it, because God absolutely wants a relationship with every single person here on earth. It's just us, you know, how deep do we want to go? And the last thing to say, that what you ask for, you know, from God, be prepared. You know, the scripture where Jesus talks about the builder and counting your cost, you know. So counting the cost, understanding what it is to be a Christian. It comes with a lot of ups and downs, struggles. I never encourage people to think that it's a blissful walk, because that's a lie. But it's absolutely worth it in the end, because your testimony, and that's why testimonies absolutely have to be true in this sense. Your testimonies will help so many people, because from your testimony of truth, it does something in the supernatural to someone else it's not about how many people it reaches. It's about, even if it's just one person, it does something when you speak truth. So I thank you, Vladimir, for giving me this opportunity. And whoever may hear this one day, I pray that, it may help them to have peace and knowledge and understanding and encouragement to know that, have a relationship with God. Encourage them to read the word, because it is a living book, And I just wanted that,
Thank
just
you.
to preface.
Love all of that. And just a couple of questions to follow up on. You mentioned dry fast or fasting in general. Lifestyle of prayer and fasting, so important. Staying in the word, prayer and fasting. Those are like the three things that are like foundational stuff, fundamentals that everyone should be doing. But it's interesting that it happened to you during a dry fast. And somebody else I interviewed on this show and on the main show, she did and I think it was Angel Michael told her to do a dry fast for 3 days. And then 4 days after that, it was a total of 7 days, and a water fast after that. And during that experience, when she did that, she literally heard like chains being broken during this fast when she did all this. I'm getting the details wrong. Could have been like shortly after, but fasting is very powerful. If you want to see a breakthrough in your life, there's something about fasting that you just can't do. It can't do without.
Yeah, it's if I especially at that moment, because that was actually the first time I'd fasted. It wasn't even something that I'd done.
Wow, and a dry fast. First time?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, when I say to you that, the zeal of someone who's just born again and he's got that passion for Christ. And, when the Bible even says, don't lose your zeal for God.
The first love.
It's exactly that. Your first love, exactly. It's so important, because when you ask or call for God, it's absolutely that. When you almost in a sincere way presented in God in whatever state of mind you're in, and you're not holding back. If you want to ask him a question, if you're in a place where you need him to just direct you, it's absolutely that. So the dry fast was exactly that. There was no liquids involved, not even water. And when I got to the third day, during the day, when you could feel your tongue sort of sticking to the roof of your mouth.
Wow.
And I was like, okay,
that's serious.
I haven't yet gotten the message or what I need to talk about tomorrow, because it was literally the next day I needed to speak. But, obviously after that experience, I just had to tell, the youngsters that, there is a God. And I just needed direction, and I didn't want to ask another human being, someone from the church, how do I go about doing this? And that my relationship with God has always been like that. Because, with a lot of experiences you find after your first few days or years with God, you have your ups and downs as well. But, when you get back on the road, you realize that first love you had is so important. And that first love is your interaction with God. And fasting, however which way you do it, just come to him as you are.
It requires work. I mean, if you think about it, some people might say like, well, that's legalistic. It's just like any relationship. I've been married for 15 years. It's so easy to lose touch, right? When you lose a conversation with your spouse, you lose your spouse. You lose a conversation with your friends, you lose your friends. You lose the conversation with God, watch out. And I think it's all about just keep that conversation keeping the conversation going, however you can. Finding that time, get alone, communicate with him, talk about your day, talk about the things that are going into your life, include him into your daily life. It's like my father called me the other day and he was just like, Vlad, you're not calling much these days. You know, I'm your father. I want to hear from you. I mean, I know, like I see online, like what things are doing, but I want to hear from you. I don't want to hear from anybody else. I want you to just call me. Tell me how things are going. Let me, so I can pray for you. And then he reminded me also, in the same way your heavenly father wants to hear from you. Are you too busy for him? And I was like, man, Dad, you're something else. You're God sent. And that's my challenge to all of us, right? Don't be too busy to spend time with the Lord. It's a reminder for myself. It's so easy to lose that conversation. Again, what you don't use, you lose, right? If you don't lose that, if you don't communicate, if you lose that conversation, you lose the relationship, and it requires effort. So, wow, powerful stuff, man. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. Let me just look down and see if I have any other follow-up questions for you. Man, it was powerful. And so this happened back in 2007. You had a lot of time to process all of that stuff. And but another thing you said, I have it written down right here, that both the Father and the Son spoke in one voice. It's like they're one. And there's something about you and others that share that as well. There's something about in the name. Like even when I had my face-to-face encounter with Jesus in a dream, I asked him like, well, if you are Jesus, tell me what my name is. And he said, you are Vladimir Viktor Proknievsky. He said my name full, but the way that is said in my country, right? And it just instantly hit me hard. Like, I know this is Jesus I'm standing before. And there's something about in the name. When somebody says there's a certain way, when the way the people that know you close, the way they say their name, it's different than the way the world says your name. You know, and same thing with the Father when he says your name. It's different. It's straight from the source. It's straight from the creator of your name, so to speak. Well, speaking of names, Bongani. I hope I probably butchered it again, but thank you so much for your time. This was awesome. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you, Vladimir, for your time as well. I appreciate it. And I'll keep you and your family in my prayers. And, remember your dad.
Yes. Reminder to all of us. Keep falling on the knees and crying out to God. When in doubt, you run to Jesus. You run to him first. Thank you for the reminder. Bongani, we'll stay in touch. Talk soon. God bless.
We will do.
Bye-bye.
You too, man.
Hey, if this story moved you, there is definitely more. Every day, someone new shares their supernatural encounter with Jesus. So hit subscribe right now and don't miss what's coming up next. And if you're ready for another powerful supernatural testimony, tap the next video on your screen right now, and I'll see you there.